A question.
Yes.
When was the last time you ate out?
What?
Ate out. When was the last time?
Oh, I thought you meant the last time I was eaten out. What the heck?
That's a good question. When was the last time you ate out?
I think Barack Obama was president. What about you?
It's been a while. I think was it? It's been a while.
Actually don't need you to answer this one.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I thought you were genuinely concerned.
Yeah, but not on the podcast. We've asked you. I know you're trying to be more open, but not that open. Anyway, guys, welcome to Gellen's Guys podcast with me, Natasha.
And Connie.
And I sometimes go by Nat.
I sometimes go by Michelle.
Yes, Michelle. What's going on?
I go like that. What's happening with you?
No.
How's it been? How's working from home?
I've been fine. I will say that I am kind of fed up with the pandemic. And I know, listen, people have it worse off, but I don't know. I just feel I'm starting to feel like, not that I want life to go back to normal, but I'm just tired of this thing being around us.
Yeah, no, I get that. And it's awful, isn't it? In that I can see some things that have changed positively due to Corona. I feel people are a little bit perhaps more connected. I feel that there is a little bit more of checking up on people's mental health, which didn't necessarily happen a lot before. Well, certainly to me. I don't think that happened a lot. But there's been some changes that I feel like, okay, I'm obviously, I feel terrible, the number of people who have died and people who've been affected and stuff. But yeah, I get it. I get when you say you're fed up.
Yeah.
Fed up from
it being a thing. But anyway, let's get to this episode. So before we go on, let's start off with some comments that we had from our previous two episodes, episode 54, episode 53. I'll just quickly start off from the last episode that we had. So thank you again to Twape Mtila for joining us in the last episode. If you have not listened to it, please make sure you hit rewind and listen to episode 54. We talked about wills, inheritance, trust, tax, and all that stuff. And Twape has a podcast called Twape's Podcast. He's based in Malawi. So guys, please check him out. I'll just get right into it with regards to some of the comments that we received from that. So on Twitter, @Sipo_Mdao say this was a really good episode. Well done, ladies. Also on Twitter, @Nobutech said very informative episode. Thank you, Mandombazana Lejaha. And actually, so shout out to @Kuda_Nyangoni. So he took some time to do a thread of his thoughts. So shout out to him. If you have time, I suggest that you guys go into it and check it out. So he said, I'll just read some of what he said. He said, I'm circling back after listening to Gellen's Guys and Twape Mtila talk about inheritance because I feel strongly about it. Moving away from the financial advisory opinions, I want to try psychoanalyzing the attitudes Black Africans have about inheritance in a thread. So he started off with saying, I like how Twape rightly acknowledged that different people have different perceptions and intentions when it comes to matters of inheritance. But I feel like as Black Africans, especially my he put in quotes, generational wealth crew in the back have to learn and embrace inheritance. Yep. In most conversations I've had with people about this, I've rarely come across anyone who seriously believes and consciously engages the idea of transferring wealth to their spouse and children when they pass away. And then he highlighted some of the conversations that we had, but I thought that was a really interesting take. So shout out to Kuda. And there were other comments on Twitter. So if you guys just search hashtag Gallons Guys to see the rest of the comments on episode 54. Was there anything that stood out to you? YouTube stuff?
There was Brand to Build Co. said, thanks for sharing this, a very profound lesson. Rax Real also commented and said, and this is the inheritance part as well, and she said, I think about what I will leave for my daughter. Building assets for the generation should prayerfully reduce the struggle. And you know, I think that was I thought that was quite profound, because I think a lot about what I'm going to leave my daughter, and then having that whole conversation was like, okay, so these are the things that we need to kind of do to make sure that you leave stuff, like, you know, in the right form as well. And then, so I think there was just a lot of comments with people saying that, you know, they really enjoyed the episode, that it was really insightful. Thank you for this. Thank you for sharing this. So yeah, I think there was just, you know, thank you again to Tope for joining us and sharing his wisdom on that financial kind of aspect of things.
Yeah, and before we move on, I wanted to shout out all the people that commented episode 53. So this was our premiere of season 3. Shout out to Edwin Gossi on Twitter. So she shared her thoughts as she was listening, and she was like, I also want to know when the R rate in relationships will be less than 1. So we talked about, you know, the other pandemic.
Several pandemics running at the same time.
Exactly. And then she said, the Xolie date situation, I would rather the guy give recommendations or suggestions than order for me. Yes, I might have said I like certain things, and he is showing that he paid attention, but I might want to try something different that day. So this was the scenario that you gave about someone ordering on your behalf. So I thought that was really interesting. And also shout out to at the Manyati on, let me see what, okay, the Manyati on Twitter. So she shared quite a few, what did you say? So on cheating, she was like, oh, it's hectic, avoid it if possible. Confessions need to be done early if you're going to say anything. If you're doing it after years of not getting caught unprovoked, take your L. Men especially don't like being told what they didn't ask for emotionally. So I thought that was an interesting take. And then like quite a lot of comments saying welcome back, guys. But yeah, so thank you guys again for all your engagement.
Yeah. And I'm just looking so from Instagram, we had a few comments, generated quite a bit of conversation actually in regards to confessions, as Asha Raymond once called it. So Saint Tinashe says, the pregnant wife must confess. And if the gent was also running game, he must confess. Otherwise, the guilt is going to come out while sleeping. That's when people talk in their sleep.
I'm sorry.
So that's when people talk in their sleep and confess. I've never experienced that, but you know, Saint Tinashe is telling us something. And he also said that Nat is different. She's using more ebonics.
I had to Google that. I think it's like American slang.
All right. And then what else did we have? There are a few other comments regarding this whole cheating scenario. And Figile M. Kededube was like, what if the husband asks if you've been with someone? Do you tell the truth then? Good question. You know, do you tell the truth? What do you do now?
if someone asks you, you then gotta. There's a reason they're asking you. They probably know something.
Yeah, fair. And then Rack S. Real said, it would be heavy on my conscience. However, some people prefer not to know. Sweet lie versus bitter truth conundrum. Yeah, it's a difficult one. But at the end of the day, I think the general consensus was, hey, mind your own business. Mind your own.
Face your front.
Your front and just continue.
Mind your business. Okay. And then I just quickly wanted to say shout out to all the people that tuned into our Gallons Guys Instagram live. Probably what, two weeks ago now, when we debuted Love in Skies.
Yeah.
So no, it's not a laughing matter, guys. This is a serious what is it? This is a public service that is being done here with Love and Skies, right?
I agree. You know, and thank you for being honest enough to come back and actually be like, you know what? From the Find Love with Nat, where I chowed the stock, some of us could be married by now. But here you go, you chowed all the stock. So I think it was really good of you to kind of like, okay, you know what? I'm going to revamp this and just kind of put this on this platform and throw it to the people. And the people loved it. I loved it. I was like, oh, wow. And
what happened?
I actually got a DM from a guy who was like, oh, you know what? I saw you on Love in Skies on Saturday. You were, you know, so allow me to shoot my shot. I was like, shoot it, bro, shoot it, you know.
And then what happened?
And then he's like, oh, you know, I just want to take you out for coffee. Do you like, mention the place? Oh, he's mentioned Starbucks. So I was like, okay, so he's in the UK. And I was like, yeah, okay, interesting. So that is one for watching. So there we go. It works, guys, is what I'm saying. You know, there's quite a few people, quite a few ladies, I think, who came on and were like, oh, you know what, looking for this, looking for that. So hopefully they'll come back in the next few weeks and be like, this has happened for me. It was really good. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. And all the people who came on, the married guy who came on giving his take, it was thoroughly enjoyable. So you never know.
You know what? I'm not going to waste time, you know, defending my reputation because people are saying this dog or like whatever. Wow, but I have to explain because there are people that listen to this that are not on Twitter that don't know. So just to explain, some time back, out of the kindness of my heart, right, I was like, let me help people. And anyway, I had this thing on Twitter, the hashtag Find Love with Nat. It's a play on, I think there is a South African that has Find Love with so-and-so. I forget what, yeah. So someone's just suggested it. And literally not to be, like, it started off as a light-hearted joke. You know, I was like, fine. And actually then people were like, so serious. I was like, yo, this matchmaking business is intense. But I stopped doing it because I'll be honest, it is too much paperwork. I totally agree with everyone that charges people because it is insane. Not paperwork, it's just too much admin. It's a lot. Like if someone says, oh, I like this, then you have to take time to be thinking, maybe so-and-so or whatever. But anyway, I do know people that, you know, like they progress there. No, I do know people, but it'll be up to them to come out and say, to come out and be honest.
Where are they?
Listen, if you are one of those people, you know, please publicly come out because at this point, I'm about to actually.
You know what? Do you know what? I recall you at some point in time when you're doing it like on Twitter and you message saying, oh, there's this guy.
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah. And then we would all jump, say, oh, yes, put us forward. 2 weeks, nothing, no news. And then the next thing is like, Auntie, Natasha, I thought you were. And then next thing, Natasha is seeing she's gone out for dinner. Or Natasha Gasabambegi, you know, every time you call her, she's on the phone. You're like, what's going on here?
This is fake news. But anyway, let's fast forward. Let's look into the future. So now, Love and Skies is more transparent and it is, it's more transparent, one, and number two, it is less admin for me, right? And the thing is, how this is going to work, the success is going to be based on people putting themselves out there. If no one puts themselves out there, then it's not going to be successful.
We need more. We need more people. We need more men.
That's why when we were talking, we were like, how frequently should we do this? And remember, we were like, nah, you know what? At least to kind of start off with, maybe let's do this once a month. Because if we do it too frequently or every weekend, it just ends up being just the same group of us coming together and just having a laugh, right? So how this is supposed to work is, it's so easy. It's like 4 easy steps. One, you guys have to be following us on Instagram, Girl in Skies, right? And that's where you'll be the first to see when we say, oh, we're going to have our, Love in Skies on this particular weekend. We will try and give you guys like a day or two heads up so that you know. And then number two, when we have the live, like, we need you guys to invite people to come on, because we think, like, first of all, if you are, if maybe you're already aware of Girl in Skies or you listen to us, there are already a lot of shared things there. It could be like shared culture, shared language, just shared interests. So it already means we have curated the people that are coming, right, on the platform for you, right? So you come on, and how it works is, you just request to come on live. You tell us a little bit about yourself, what your preferences are, where you are, and who knows, someone may be watching and may be interested, and then they slide into your DMs. It has nothing to do with us. You can report back to us. We'd love to hear good reports, like, if you receive them, but it is entirely up to you. There's no one, intercepting, nothing, yeah.
This is a potential to kind of end, like Tinagapa in the UK. So this
UK guys I don't know. I don't think this will help the UK. I think it's a phenomenon. I think this place is just dry land.
You don't know that though. People could come up.
Yeah.
Don't be pessimistic. Let's be optimistic.
Okay.
Auntie Tina in the UK. So, but anyway.
And that's why I'm speaking from experience.
I think it's a great thing, and strongly encourage you guys to come to come on board and actually come on the live. We talked a little bit as well about people creating fake accounts. I don't know if it would work. I don't know. It's up to you if you're shy, if you don't want to kind of put yourself out there. But there's an element that you need to be the one to kind of like, okay, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to go for. It was very interesting, that live. We ended up learning a lot of other things.
Of course. We
tying things that tie people together.
Oh no, do you know what I was about to do?
What?
Oh no, I feel so bad. That song that says, I think it's a Sunday school song that says, bind us together, Lord. Let's move on.
It's binding, but it's not it's not anyway Christian.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know, maybe it is Christian.
Can we please move on? This is really shaking my faith.
I'm really interested in this. But anyway, so what's happening in politics? It's been a while since you kind of hit us up on politics.
Yes. I just wanted to just talk a little bit about politics. So America, all eyes are on America. Well, most eyes are on America because the elections are November 3rd. And listen, I am one of those people, I have booked the next day off, because I am staying up to see what the heck is going to happen. I mean, guys, President Trump, another 4 years.
It's difficult.
But it could happen, because listen, I know
the fact that it happened before is just like, there's no way that man will be elected.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's the thing with polls. I personally don't trust the polls. We already know that some people who vote Trump are called shy Trump voters, which they don't disclose that they'll vote for him. And I've kind of seen other, I want to say, sort of interesting things where there's some demographics who've historically kind of voted Democrat, who kind of seem to be very, they're not engaged, they're not excited. In politics, there's this whole thing that happens where someone comes and says, "Oh, they're all the same." No, they're not the same. It's just like even like in Zim, like people be like, "Oh, they're all." No, they're not the same. So it'll be interesting to see. So, and then President Trump has come out saying, "Oh, he's now immune." The first person to like confidently say that, when scientists are telling us that, they don't know how, corona behaves, and there've been cases of reinfection. So for me, like, American politics is like a sport. It's like the NBA, like how the Lakers won today. For me, this is like watching the playoffs. It's that interesting. But I can imagine if you are American, it is it's quite it is something else. And then also wanted to highlight, in Nigeria, there have been protests. The hashtag end SARS has been on Twitter or over social media. So just my understanding, and interested if we have any Nigerian listeners or people that know more about this, please do hit us up on Getting Skies on our social media and just give us more information. So SARS is the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, and the End SARS is a social movement in Nigeria that started on Twitter, calling for the banning of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, a unit of the Nigerian police force. So it's a call to end police oppression and brutality in Nigeria. I was listening to a clip from a radio station where people were calling in with just their experience with this particular unit that seems to target people that seem to, have wealth, and sometimes try and get them to pay bribes, to just get them off their case. There was I think what triggered this whole thing is a few Saturdays ago, I believe on the 3rd of October, there was a video that came out on social media where there was a shooting of a young Nigerian in the Delta State, and it was alleged that the police officers took away that young man's vehicle, which he was driving a Lexus SUV. And then that trending video called for the ending of that. The latest that I've seen is that President Buhari has announced that the special unit will be disbanded. So this is what, sort of like 2 weeks or so after the whole, thing started. So that it will be disbanded. But I think what will be interesting to... Huh?
No, I'm saying those people who are in that unit are actually being deployed into other...
into other parts. So I thought what was interesting is even like Burna Boy tweeted and was like, well, actually, this is the first step, but actually it's a whole mentality that needs to be disbanded. It's not just disbanding of the unit, but it's disbanding of the mentality.
Yeah, and for me, that was what kind of it struck out for me. I'm like, okay, no, it's great that it's no longer functioning. It's no longer, it doesn't exist anymore. However, the people who then formed those are now penetrating other departments and other places and more. So in essence, really, is it more kind of giving them a bigger platform, because you can't really change someone's way of thinking. You can't change someone's mind just by putting them in a different environment.
Yeah.
And just a thought.
Yeah. No, that's true. And again, like to all our Nigerian listeners and people that know more about this, please hit us up. And also, like in Namibia, there has been, so the hashtag shut it all down has been trending, and my understanding of it is really it's against femicide and Namibian women being tired of being victims of sexual and gender violence. And there was a thread that I saw on Twitter that was quite helpful in kind of contextualizing it. That said that basically during the period of like January 2019 to June 2020, according to the figures that they had, on average, it meant that there were 3 rape cases that were reported to the police every day.
Yeah.
Right. And then like even the numbers of people that have been killed are just worse. And actually, we know that cases that are reported, it isn't a true reflection of what happens. A lot of cases are not reported for various reasons. So if you check out the hashtag Shut It All Down, you'll see more of that. And and people, like I think it was quite similar to some of the stories that we probably had heard from South Africa, but I had just not come across it in Namibia. So just wanted to kind of highlight that. And I thought it was interesting because what's this guy's name? Musi, the guy from South Africa, from the former DA leader, he was like, the young people in Africa, like really speaking out in like in Southern Africa, we've had the Zimbabwean Lives Matter, we've got this like Shut It All Down Namibia, and obviously like West Africa with the Nigerian movement. And I think there is something there, which I don't know what the direct link is, but there is something there with kind of like having leaders who are remarkably much older than the population that they govern. And there's a disjointedness there. And it's nice to kind of see that energy coming from young people. And again, like we saw with the Nigerian thing, the president has now come out saying that's been disbanded. Although that is only just a first step, it kind of feels like it's a victory of sorts. And it obviously made me think of the teapot country.
Yeah, we've got a long way to go. And it's, when we kind of touched on sexual abuse a few episodes ago, I forgot which episode number that was. And even when we were doing like that bit of reading, the magnitude of sexual abuse, the magnitude of people who are, raped, mutilated, post-rape, the numbers are incredibly huge. And the impact that has on people's lives, like seriously, it's crazy. And you never hear that much about, well, I hardly hear anything about Namibia, and that they have actually come out, identified that, what, this is a problem. And as you're saying, right, people have spoken up about it, and steps are now being taken to kind of help to, I don't know, I don't think you'll ever eradicate it, but steps are being taken to kind of make it a better place. I think that's remarkable. And it's the first step. It's just that speaking up about it is always the hard bit when it comes to things like sexual abuse. So yeah, power to Namibia.
Yeah, and then Zim, listen, I personally am taking a break from that country following its politics, but it is a hot mess. There is no hope. That's it from me.
Don't say that there is no hope.
Yeah.
Don't say that. Okay.
People should just try and leave that country.
How? How would you do it?
We'll come back to this.
You're not giving Zimbabwean politics a little bit of extra love. Like, is anything at all nothing?
We have failed as a people. Our politics has failed us. We have shown our cowardice. We are seeing what other countries are doing, and we just don't have that energy. So we
get tired.
We are tired. Yeah, I'm tired. I recognize my failing. Like we are very weak people, I think.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say.
Okay. On that note, moving swiftly forward. So today, we wanted to talk about, so we've had a few discussions about this, and it's quite great that, we have similar but yet kind of different angles to how we're physically involved with it. And that is the aspect around diversity and inclusion. Ever since George Floyd, that was now a few months ago, ever since he died, he passed away, he was killed in America. And ever since that, there has been a huge kind of outcry from different companies, different companies kind of saying that, Black Lives Matter. And as a result of the hashtag Black Lives Matter, as a result of the movement of Black Lives Matter, I have found that it's kind of seeped its way into our professional environments. And people are now like, oh, but does this actually, what does this actually mean? And as a result of people asking that, or pretending to ask that, or wanting to know why there's Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, there's been the growth and the development, I suppose, or not even the development, because it's something that has been there for a long time, running along the sidelines. And that's diversity and inclusion has really been kind of put to the forefront. So workplaces, professional environments are kind of saying, we recognize that we have ethnic minorities. We recognize that we have got people who are belong to different groups. So whether it's people who are a little bit older, so covering people who are, so covering the ageism, so covering sexism, so making sure that you've got people who from the LGBTQIA community. So we are basically an inclusive. So we want you to come and work with us because this is who we are. We're very inclusive of everybody. We want everybody to come and work with us. And then it made me really think. So I work for an American company. And just recently, they have kind of turned around and said, oh, you know what, we need to have a diversity and inclusion forum at work. And of course, Lady here has put herself forward to be part of the forum. So we had our first meeting about 2 to 3 weeks ago, which I found really interesting. It made me really think about what is this a tick box exercise to be so that you're seen to be doing what everybody else is doing, so that you are seen, quote unquote, to be accepting of those who are non-white, because I think that is, or not even just non-white, but that having that inclusive environment, is it just to kind of say, this is who we are. This is what has happened. This is who we are. We have this come and work for us tick box exercise. And it made me also think about when I was sitting in that room, it made me think that, okay, so this is meant to be a safe space to kind of really drive the agenda of the people who you feel needs to be, who are diverse and who need to be included in the workplaces. Is this really a safe forum? Because ideally, you're not going to have 100 people in that group. You're going to have some people, you're going to have some representatives of somebody who's a Black and ethnic minority. You're going to have somebody who is, like I said, a member of the LGBTQIA. So is it really a space for us to kind of highlight the issues that people are experiencing? Or are we going to get marked down because we are highlighting these issues? So me, if I'm now bringing to the table, to this D&I community forum table, that, oh, you know what, as a Black woman, these are my experiences. And not only my experiences, but I've spoken to 10 other women who have, or 10 women or men who have come on and said that these are, you know what, me too. This has actually happened to me too. Are we going to now, as time progresses, when promotions are being dished out, is that a way of kind of marking us down as well? Because how safe is it for us to be people who are a driving force for change? Because I think that is what is the biggest that is what the common goal is for most of these platforms, is to be driving forces for change, to make positive impact, so that everybody does feel, you know what, we are seen, we are heard. But I'm down again, like I just feel that it's a tick box exercise. And the other side of me actually recognizes that, you know what, am I always going to want more? Do you know what I mean? Now that they're like, okay, so here's a platform for you. And I'm saying, okay, but actually it's not quite enough. So am I always going to be in a position to want more? And the last thing, I think we had quite a long discussion about this as well, is where do we find spaces to be ourselves 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Because this diversity and inclusion forum is one day every 6 weeks, or whatever it is, it's 30 minutes. And this is a place where you can come in, you can talk about your experiences, you can, amongst your peers, you can think about, okay, so this is what I'm going to do to make sure this doesn't happen to the next person. On top of that, you are still working the full 37 and a half hours a week. So if there's anything that is required from a Black Lives Matter movement, they'll come in and they'll throw it at us and be like, oh, what do you guys think? Because, you know, that's what we're there for, to provide that perspective. But we're doing that on top of our actual work. What do you think? Like, so maybe it would be quite good just for you to kind of, like, what's the difference between the two, and how have you found things in your work?
Okay. Oh, I think it's, what you've just said is so interesting. So is it a genuine exercise? It depends. I think it's fair to say for some organizations, for some people, it is a tick box exercise. And you have to recognize that. And I think it's interesting what you say, because I think it sounds like you guys are probably, obviously won't dwell too much into like work stuff, but it sounds like you're at the beginning of that journey, because there's a difference between diversity and inclusion. There's diversity and inclusion, there's anti-racism, there is social mobility. So how do people progress? Those arguably could be three different things that I think what happens is they all fall under diversity and inclusion, right? So from the sounds of it, I think let's just take it at maybe people listening and having similar experiences, maybe with work, whatever. Yeah. You guys have to define what is the purpose of what it is you're doing. And you may have to spend more time defining that. Yeah. Because what my experience with these things is, it can end up becoming a talking shop. Yeah. Yeah. Where people meet and we all sort of say, oh, you know, and we rightly talk about, you know, some of the, I don't know, microaggressions or some of the scenarios that we find ourselves in. So I think that the thing is to kind of like really define it for each person. What are we trying to do, right? And then I think the point that you made about, so I think, yeah, it can be a tick box. You have to recognize it, right? Like that's the only way. You have to recognize that, yeah. Is it a safe space? You can make it a safe space, but again, that's what I'm saying. The problem that I have with diversity and inclusion, when it's not really spelled out, like what are we trying to achieve, is it assumes that ideologically everyone agrees, politically everyone agrees, our lived experiences are kind of the same. And sometimes it's not the case. And what I find is that
I'd say arguably most times it's not the case.
Yeah, because but the thing is, we are living in such a okay, I was going to explain this at the end, but I think I'll start now to just kind of like frame it even in my mind. Is like, okay, we're in these like workspaces, schools, institutions, right? But it's not how can I say it? These things are not happening in isolation. We're living in this global world, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And even if you think about, let's say it as like the Western world, because I always find that ideologically, like the West's ideology, for me as an African, I don't always find a natural home to say left or right, because the issues,
Yes.
that they are their core issues on either side, I may have different views on different things, right? So I think where we are, just like if you gauge the temperature of just what the world we're living in, it's just such a sad, depressing, racist filled. Yeah, you have a Trump president, you have the rise of the far right in Europe, and all these things are brought to the fore, or made possible by people, right? People are regular people who also have regular jobs, and who may work where you work or where I work. And so it will be foolish to think that even if there is a good intention around diversity and inclusion, it doesn't inform some of the thinking that sort of comes in. So I'll give you an example, right? I don't know if you've heard of this thing. It's a new thing to me. It's called critical race theory.
No, I haven't heard of it.
You may not have heard of the term, but you know of it. So basically, critical race theory says that it just shows the relationship between the state, institutions, and race. And it started in America. And it just shows like how there are some things that are, institutionally racist or holding up racist ideals, right? And what the critical race theory tries to do is to point out these things so that, they can be dismantled and, understood. So there's a lady called, I believe her name is Kimberly Crenshaw. She's the one who came up with intersectionality as a theory, right? She's one of the people that came up with this whole critical race theory. And I think when you hear that, like what critical race, you'll be like, yeah, I understand that, because if you think about the prison industrial complex, if you think about police, how police...
How they operate.
Yeah, and why they started, right?
Yeah.
Those
down
things,
to the next stage, yeah.
Exactly. And those, but even if you think about that, police, like, it was to police minorities. Like the whole punishment of going to prison, if we look at the American context, but we know that it then cascades to the rest of the world. So that's what critical race theory then does, sort of tries. And that's where all these like unconscious bias training come in and all that stuff, right? To kind of like, expose that and help. However, a week or two ago, we had President Trump debating Joe Biden, right? And he was asked, right, that why did you withdraw? So his government withdrew, it was called anti-bias training. So all the unconscious bias training, all that stuff, he said, so he got rid of it, right? That federal employees shouldn't be going for those trainings. Recently in the UK, we had a similar thing where a number of MPs refused to take unconscious bias training, right? And when he was asked, he said, no, it's because it's racist, right? So although when you hear that, although like it wasn't done from the prism of like academics or ideology, right? Because I don't know if Trump has an ideology that he stands behind, but what it is it is attacking this critical race theory. So all these things attack, all this like unconscious bias training and all that stuff. So, and that is and the reason I gave that example is that is at That's lead of the free world.
Yeah.
Right? So that sips in. So now you come in with your diversity and inclusion forum, right? And you are coming in from a point of like, this is how I feel. These are my lived experiences. And you're dealing with some people who ideologically fundamentally disagree with you and fundamentally are like, I don't like this critical race theory because what it does, it exposes institutions like, we want to silence this thing, right? And then
so have a diversity and inclusion forum.
No, but what I'm saying is you need to realize your forum is in this world.
I know, I get it. I was saying, Uti, like, you know, where there is all this unconscious bias and people are like, oh, you know, don't send people for training for that. Instead, have something to show that we are including people and that we are kind of accepting diverse, you know, people from diverse backgrounds is what I was trying is the point I was trying to put across. Interestingly enough, like, I feel that where institutional racism comes in is, you know, looking at your leadership structure and recognizing that there is nobody up there who you can kind of look up to. Interestingly enough, it's also about occupying different spaces in different times. And I say this because recently, and I told you this, that I had this interview with this woman who I'm pretty sure, had I not been in that space, might have actually been put through and hasn't got the job because she was really well qualified. There was no reason why she shouldn't have got the job. But one of the questions asked was, you know, how would you look after somebody from a, I think there's something based around, there's a lot of people from diverse backgrounds. How do you look after one particular person from another background compared to yours? The first answer is, I don't see color. I was like, I put my pen down. I was like, that's the end of it for me. I was like, you don't see color. And she was like, oh, you know, everything that's happening in the media right now, I'm just totally, I don't see all that. I think we should treat people the same. I was like, and this is the problem, is that people like that kind of seep in, not people like that, that's terrible, but people with that mentality kind of really then seep into organizations and go in and not see color when you're looking after the person who is from wherever they are from, but they're different from you. You know, this is the problem. And then these people then kind of then get promoted into, and it's easy for them to get promoted into senior management positions, and they kind of then interview. It's like a vicious circle. They then will interview somebody else who comes like, oh, I don't see color. What is color? You know, we are all the same. And so then begins that whole cycle. It becomes a vicious cycle.
But let's stop there a little bit, right? Because how do you, okay, and this is a gripe that I have with other, I won't mention. Okay, how do you recognize where someone just doesn't have the current language? Let me go back, because that whole like, oh, I don't see color, right? To be fair, like playing, you know, the other advocate is, if you go back 8, 7, 10 years from now, 10 years ago, that was a way of saying, oh, you know, I treat everyone the same. I don't see. No, I'm just saying, like, that was
yeah.
That was so how do you sometimes recognize when it's just not knowing, because we are knee deep in these things, right? So we now know the language. Yeah. Well, no, okay, and we'll go, and the thing is, this woke thing, it's unfortunate because it's now been taken by like real extreme right-wing ideology as being a bad thing. But if we're talking in its purest sort of sense, I will say, like, I remember I was saying to someone that, you know, 5 or so years ago, if someone had come into a room and be like, oh, how many people are feminists out of like put all both my hands up, right? And if they're like, do you want to come and talk about, I would have been like, yeah, I want to come and talk about it. But now if someone came and was like, I would put my hands up. But if they're like, do you want to talk about it? I'd be like, no. Because why? I feel like I don't have the academic language. So sometimes, maybe which is not like the example that you gave, but the point that I wanted to drive is sometimes there's a lot of, for example, like I talked about critical race theory, right? But there's a simpler way of breaking it down. So sometimes you can have discussion with people like, oh, critical race theory, and you're like, what are they talking about? I don't have the language, but actually it's easy to understand. So I do think that sometimes there is a bit of, that's what I'm saying, how do you sometimes identify that, oh, maybe this person means well, but just doesn't
necessarily know.
Just doesn't know what
you know, and thank you for highlighting that, because I think I have been kind of my eyes closed to that. So I think that is fair. To say that maybe you don't necessarily have the language, you don't necessarily, and you're like, oh, but let's treat everybody the same. But for that particular example, I think that where we are coming from is that you can't treat everybody the same. Everybody is different and everybody is unique in their own way. There is such a drive on person-centeredness, so being all about the person that you are, so like I'm with you right now. So I'm Natasha, this is my time with Nat, this is my time with Ian, and Ian and Nat are two different people, even if Ian is Black, or let me say, I don't know, Zenzele, and both you and Zenzele are the same. You're both women, you're both Black, you're both whatever it is. But it's about knowing that, okay, so this person is unique in their own way. So I think that kind of trumps out that particular example, in that even if she didn't have the terminology for it, she could have literally gone round about it in a different way. Because you can't, I disagree in that you can't not see what is in front of you, because that is a problem. And that is why people suffer, removing race, removing whatever sex you are. That is why people suffer, because we are not seen. All we want is to be seen. You want to be acknowledged. You want to be not even appreciated by that person. You just want to be seen, right? So it's not about treating everybody the same. I think where you brought in the whole, what did you call it? Sorry, what's a critical race theory?
Yeah, I'm just, because I was giving an example of like sometimes we use people with language.
So with critical race theory, for example, you asked me like, do you know it? I was like, no, I don't know it. But then once you explained it, I'm like, oh, actually, no, I do know that. So that is something that I would have an opinion on, but just because I don't necessarily know the terminology. So I think what I'm trying to say is that there is knowing the language, but there's also just being a human being. There's just knowing the basics, in that, okay, so yes, even if you do not know if you know critical race theory, you will know that people experience racism in different institutions, but you just don't necessarily know that this is the umbrella term that is called.
Yeah. And
even though you can say, I don't see color, and mean that come from a very positive way, come from a very good meaning place, it doesn't necessarily equate to being a good thing.
Yeah, and that's where, like, with that, for example, that's why I was like, with that sort of type of person, it's a bit hard, maybe, but it's a case of like a judgment call. Okay,
yes,
can I teach this person, right? And then it lends itself to people wanting to learn, right?
Yeah,
which is where like the whole diversity and inclusion comes in. Because
wait, can I ask a question? Because you just made me realize something as well, in that I was quite, I think for me, it was that was a big thing, that she was like, oh, I don't see color. I was like, okay. But do you think in a way that we are becoming, or maybe I'll speak for myself, do you think that I was a little bit more biased then against her? Do you see what I mean? Because you can be biased because of your name, your color, where you're from, and automatically someone cancels you. But then I waited till the end of her interview, and I was like, oh no, I think these are the other reasons that I feel like, not quite ready for this role. And I also threw in, I was like, I don't really appreciate that somebody from a caring background can say that she sees everybody the same, because that's a problem for me. But you think in a way that I was unconsciously biased because she automatically said that she didn't see color?
You were not you were consciously biased.
I was consciously biased, yeah. Right. Not unconscious, yeah.
And that's why I guess you were in the room, which is why, now there's a whole thing of having diverse panels, right? And it's hard for me to say, because there is and unfortunately, right, with us, there's the double consciousness that we kind of like live in, which is what you think, and then seeing yourself through the gaze of the majority space where you are. And sometimes even as Black women, it's like triple consciousness. It's like what you think, being in a majority white space plus being in a patriarchal space. So in that, so only you can answer that question, because then there's the judgment call element that comes in, right? Because I'll give you an example. I was in a conference type thing, right? Where this woman had done something, right? She'd done this sculpture of, like, it was like for Black History Month. It was really, really nice. And then she was talking about that she has a quilt that she did. And basically this whole, and I heard this concept from Tyler Perry, where back in the days, like slaves used to, do you remember
patch quilts? The patch ones.
Yes, because basically they tell a story of like where maybe, when this thing happened, then you have a patch which tells a story, right? So she was saying that she has that and whatever, right? And then at the end, like everyone giving their reflections, and then I think she sort of said, oh, we're all the same. Everything that's happening out there isn't right, it isn't fair. We should all be treated the same, or what? Like, I think, but she said like that whole, we're all the same and whatever. But what I'm saying is, so from a language point of view, it was like, but this woman, because she was like, oh, I'm reading this and whatever, and you can tell, I could tell that no, she's not. Maybe if I sat down with her on a one-to-one and just explained that, do you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. It's a judgment thing. No, but I'm not saying you were wrong.
I'm not. I'm just like, I'm sighing because I just feel that, and that was the last point I made initially. It's like these spaces that are then created for us. You are now that person who is, I already like, I was like, if I could sit with her for an extra hour, then I could make her. Do you see? It's like all that is extra. That is extra work. You're not like that barometer of having to explain, actually, this is how this happened. This is even though you're looking at this at A, there's a lot of stuff that has happened pre-A. It's not getting them to understand that what you have always known as the alphabet from A to Z, there's a little bit more prior to that, and how we have got to have the alphabet. So I feel like it's almost exhausting, having to constantly explain to people. And that's why I said to you, I was like, how do we get them spaces where, where you can be yourself? Like, not be yourself, but sorry, like spaces where you can, where these issues are addressed and you are not having to do extra work, where you're not having to be that barometer. Like you mentioned even before, when feminism is being talked about, or somebody says, oh, who's a feminist? Put your hand up. So again, that is extra work that one has to do.
No. And that's why I said, like, you have to be clear about the purpose of what it is that you're doing, right? And yeah, I definitely do recognize and agree with like being asked to do extra work, because actually, and that's what I'm saying, I feel like diversity and inclusion language in itself, you guys need to sit down and be like, what is this? You need to break it down, because diversity and inclusion is not so like being anti-racist is maybe part of, you know, creating an environment for real diversity and inclusion, right? But it is not the thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me as a woman, number one, that is why I would want it to. I would want to go there, because I am a woman. Number two, I'm Black. So those are the two main things that I'm bringing to the table. The next person next to me may be, you know, I don't know, feeding that, or, you know what, there's a bit of, I don't know, what's the word? Like ageism. It might be around the, you know.
No, and that's what I'm saying.
Or the next person might be like, oh, you know, I'm gay, and I feel like there isn't inclusion. So people will bring their agenda. But
for me, that's already a flaw in the no, because it's a flaw for what you as Michelle want from that forum.
No, a flaw.
FLAW. Because you're not gonna listen. Once you get a range of people, there is a middle ground and there's compromise that you're going to have to find. That's something you guys have to define what you are saying. But it also sounds like there's something else which is separate, which is around, because what we have seen with the diversity and inclusion agenda is I think it is kind of turning into a sort of cash cow, because there are diversity and inclusion consultants who get figures, because it's like it's almost like a transformational change thing. It's like change management for organizations, which takes real skill. Obviously, as somebody who, as you know, as a woman, a Black woman, you have your lived experience, and it is within your interest to share those lived experiences so that your workplace becomes a better place for you, right? But at the same time, it's then what you were saying about, you know, you don't want to end up being like the person that they go to for strategy, because that's not what you're paid, because these people are paid 6 figures to be diversity and inclusion consultant strategists. So I think that there's all that, but I don't know, I just feel like you need to just go back to the basics and be like, what are we trying to achieve? What I will say, right, let me try and find this thing. Be saying something whilst I find, okay. So, and this is something that I think has worked, like in the various groups that I've been in, right? Is you need to, because like I said, we live in this global world where there are real ideological wars that are happening that you are not going to solve in your diversity and inclusion forum. You know, so I think you then need to I think with this, you kind of need to, I think number one, you need to set out what your goals are. What are your objectives, right? So for example, I won't say your workplace, wherever, say if I were asked to go into a NHS trust or private hospital, and they were like, oh, we need to get out diversity and inclusion, I'd be like, okay, what's your understanding of this? And maybe one of the objectives is, okay, we want there to be fair representation across the NHS grades to represent, you know, our to represent the workforce. So your starting point could be, okay, what's our starting point, right? Is our starting point that we live in this particular borough, right? And in this borough, these are according to the last census, right? This borough says that 8% of people are BAME, right? Which means that the patients that you service are approximately 8%. So let's use that figure to mirror the representation that you have per grade. So you have that as a clear action that we want to get to 8% per grade, not just in the junior bands, but senior, right? And then you say to that trust, you guys have 18 months to deliver. This is how you're going to deliver. Let's look at how you advertise. Let's look at the images that you put in your advertising packs. Let's look at the agencies that you use to advertise. Not only that, what about your internal progression? How long does it take for someone to go from band 5 to band 7? How many people who are, Black or whatever quit and end up leaving the profession? So you have to use, data is actually good because data stops you from being a talking shop. Exactly. You go there with data, with facts. Exactly. Yeah. And then also the example of, that the guy who has come up with the different things, like for darker skins, the different symptoms, even the people that have made the bandages and stuff like that. That is what DNI, real inclusion does, right? Inclusion in decision making. So you can show that actually, once we've now had these people, we've seen a decline in this, whatever. We've now seen a decline in Bengali people, getting ill from diabetes because we've now included Bengali in our translation because Bengalis represent 16% of the people. Data is your friend and your technology. So I think when you start with data for your organization, right, then it's okay. It's not political.
That was my very first suggestion. I was like, what we need to do is to actually look at the different grades, and identify how many people are who are on there are women, for example, like top senior management position. How many are women? How many are ethnic and ethnic minority? Beg your pardon. And of course, one of the things that came up is when people are actually filling out your application forms, it's not mandatory to actually tick whether you are, what color you are, or where you are from, whatever it is. But yeah, so anyway, it's a massive discussion. There is loads to kind of talk about, and I just enjoy having this discussion, especially with you, because I'm just like, guys, but how is it better? Is it what are we supposed to do? Where is it better for where are spaces? Where is it better for Black women? Where is it better for being I don't know, members of different groups? Where is it? And and the answer is everywhere you go, there's going to be different issues. There's going to be different problems. There isn't a perfect place, but it's about finding a space in your own workspace and actually trying to thrive in it.
Yeah, and I think exactly like what you said. It's about, you're not going to get the perfect utopia, and that's why I think because the way you guys are doing it, it's kind of like a whole. That's why I say diversity and inclusion is one thing, but there's different parts of it,
sure,
right? Because I think what it's from the sounds of it, and that's what a lot of organizations do, right? They'll be just like, oh, diversity and inclusion, because it sounds sexy, like that's the sexy word of the time, but you need to break it down. So for example, you guys, as a starting point, to make it easy for you, you should say what's the current data and where do we want to go. This is what, an action plan. But you shouldn't have to do a lot of the thinking. You then the senior manager should then be like, okay, this is what we're committing to, and this is how we are committing to it.
I found this really interesting. Hold on 1 second. Tamara, I will cook. Don't worry. I'm nearly done. So I found this thing that I thought was interesting. So a lady she's a journalist, actually, I feel so bad because I didn't get her name. I will find her name and I'll give, if anyone is interested, just hit me up. And she kind of says that diversity is a word that has held us up so I'll start again. Diversity is a word that's held up as a solution to the obvious gaps and inequities in media industry. So she's a journalist, like I said. In its most generous and naive interpretation, it's supposed to encapsulate my experience and yours and hers and his and all of ours. Instead, the language of diversity and inclusion to us ends up feeling like we are being invited to the table as guests, but there are conditions to keeping our seat. I was like, that resonated with me because I'm like, the table is there. Come talk about this, but no, wait, you can't be too much because then, like I said initially, is like, how is that going to then affect you in the future? But yeah, so I think
no, you have, and it again, because you can't disassociate these things from the macro, like what's happening outside in this global world ideologically, and that's a real, you have to be mindful of it. I even told you, like you have to be mindful of it because there may be someone who, and how these things manifest themselves is, there's unconscious training, someone doesn't attend, someone doesn't provide input. It's not because they don't have any thoughts.
Tick box exercises again.
Yeah, but that's why you move it from being a tick box exercise to data, link it to data, organizational output, organizational benefit, right? Because depending on different companies, like it could be the bottom line or whatever the best outcome, best policy or whatever, right? That's how you because otherwise you'd be stressed because you're trying to solve world problems.
Exactly.
And
in the same 24 hours that everybody else has.
And you can't. I know it's bad.
And it's been interesting. So guys, if you have got something similar in your workspace or experiencing or thinking about starting something similar in your workspace, do let us know. And if you've got something that's been running as well for some time, like what changes have you seen happening? I think it'll be quite interesting to know.
Yeah, but what I will say is I have, on a kind of positive, like my experience has been, for the first time in a while, I've been part of like real frank, open conversations that I would have never thought, just, following the whole George Floyd, just things that maybe we talk about like code switching and stuff like that. And I do think that what makes great leaders is just understanding and listening, right?
Yeah.
So even say with you, like in your role, it's just about understanding and listening. And I think you have a harder job because I think you guys have really created a lot of work for yourselves by the whole diversity and inclusion. These things need consultants that will come but you can make your work easier by like being clear. What are our 4-5 big objectives? And you start from there. And then you leave room for the talking shop bit. Because then that goes into well-being. Sometimes it's just good to have a space where you talk. But you, as being a Black woman, I don't think you get what you're looking for in that space because you have to be inclusive again. So you may have to look for another space, Do you know what I'm saying? I think you have to manage expectations.
I know, I understand completely. And again, it's back down to like me questioning myself. I was like, but is it that you always want a little bit more? You like, okay, so you're given this and you're like, oh no, actually I want more, then they will create a space for, just Black women. And you're like, no, actually we want more. Then they'll create a space for Black people. And like, no, actually I want more. And it makes me think that, that whole concept of uti, and I know this is something that is not shared widely amongst even my peers, that whole uti, I feel like when remember when you were younger and you'd go to your favorite cousin's place, and you would sit, chill, do whatever, and they would sit with touching your bills for yourself in. Because when within Kyle, the moment you put even an inch of your foot on the sofa, you're in trouble. So you don't do that because you're in that space and you're like, oh, actually, can I do it because they're doing it? So I guess the point I was trying to say is that I'm just constantly reminded that that space that in my head I'm probably looking for doesn't probably exist, because I am that visiting cousin. And I'm constantly like, oh, is it okay to sit on the sofa? Is it okay to put my feet up because my cousin's doing that? Can I have ice cream because she's having ice cream? Will I get the same portion? Probably not. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. There's just so much that is in the air.
Yeah. And that's the migrant's dilemma, right? 100.
Anyway, we will report it back.
Yeah, guys, if you've got any comments, please let us know. This is just the beginning, and probably didn't have enough time to kind of unpack some of the things that we say. Yeah. But yeah, like if you've got any thoughts on this, just let us know. Like if you work in diversity and inclusion, let us know, and let me know how to get that bag, because they make money.
Guys, let me know too. I also want to make loads of it.
But yes, guys. #Gellens, guys.
Yeah, thank you for listening.